Today, we delve into a profound and transformative topic, the awakening occurring in many people. This awakening has a name, and it's the recognition of our imagination's power to shape our reality. We begin this talk with a message written in Hebrews 11 verse 3, which may seem confusing at first glance, but ceases to be so if we accept the idea that the material world originates from the world of imagination. Herbert Hoover once said that all of human history, with its forms of government, its wars, the rise and fall of all empires, varied in proportion to the ideas of the men who led those nations. In other words, it wasn't by chance that empires arose or disappeared, but because of the mentality of those who commanded them. Therefore, we cannot deny the invisible power that acts in all of us, which is our innate capacity to imagine. When we have the exact notion of what we want, all that remains is to do what is advised in Romans 4 verse 17, call things that are not as though they were, consider what does not exist as already existing. This is validated in John 1 verse 3 when it says that all things are already made. So, it's not difficult to call something else into our existence if all things are already made. Among an infinity of possibilities, we must choose one that pleases us with the final result we expect to experience. Then, like someone planting a seed, we must let it germinate on its own, interfering as little as possible. It's a process that cannot be forced, just as a baby cannot be torn from the mother's womb prematurely. Let me share with you the story of Mrs. Okara. She has a granddaughter named Aki, almost 3 years old. She cared for her granddaughter for a month right after her birth, but then didn't see her again due to living far apart. However, for the past year, she has imagined her granddaughter in her arms every day. In these imaginary encounters, she always hears Aki say, "God is growing perfectly through me. God is loving through me." At first, she expected more childlike responses according to her granddaughter's age, but later got used to this. Mrs. Okara could even perceive that the granddaughter in her arms was gaining weight as time passed. All this is just imagination. The granddaughter had no picture of her, so she must have been just a name to Aki, someone without a defined face. Aki's parents told Mrs. Okara that the girl has been constantly asking about her grandmother, and sometimes goes to the phone and pretends to be calling her. In this phone monologue, she always says things like, "My grandmother loves me and she comes to see me every day." With this account from Mrs. Okara, the question arises, were the encounters between the grandmother and her granddaughter really only in the realm of imagination? There is no form in nature that is not produced and sustained by some imaginative activity. Can you understand the power contained in this phrase? I'll repeat it, there is no form in nature that is not produced and sustained by some imaginative activity. Faced with this truth, I ask you, for how long have you neglected this power? Now you know that any change in your imaginative activity will unfailingly produce a change in the world around you. Imagining a new outcome, different from the one you're having, is creating that new outcome. Another story I want to tell you is that of Mrs. GB, who read in one of my books how a teacher managed to transform a delinquent student into a docile and dedicated student through the revision technique. Translator's note: you can learn more about the revision technique by clicking on the link that will appear above. Returning to the translation, upon learning this story through my book, she thought she could do the same with a student at her husband's school. In summary, Mrs. GB told me that her husband had never encountered such a difficult student to deal with. She was too young to be expelled, and yet, even the teacher didn't want to admit her to his class. To make matters worse, the girl's grandmother and mother lived in the school's domain, causing problems of all kinds. When I say lived, I don't mean they resided there, but that they were there more often than necessary. Mrs. GB wanted to help the girl, but also her husband. So, every night when she went to bed, she imagined two scenes, one where she saw the girl in a state of meekness and happiness, and another where she heard her husband speaking admiringly about this new behavior of the girl and how relieved he was not to have to deal with the girl's mother and grandmother's temperament anymore. After 2 months of indulging in this imaginary game always before sleeping, her husband came home and said, "That school seems like heaven." Finally, the girl's grandmother had traveled out of town to solve some personal problems and took the girl's mother with her. And the girl, in turn, had assumed that state of meekness that Mrs. GB had imagined for her. Yes, We can interfere with others' behavior, but no one will turn good what is totally bad, because in reality no one is totally bad. Mrs. GB didn't bring about a new state in the girl, for that state already existed in her, and it blossomed through the power of someone's expectation, in this case, Mrs. GB. I close by reciting what is written in Isaiah 61 verse 1 as a prophecy of myself. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the meek and restore the brokenhearted, giving those who are imprisoned in darkness their long-awaited light of freedom. Dear viewers, do you realize the power that resides in your minds? These stories are not mere anecdotes, they are living testimonies to the power of imagination to shape our reality. Each of you has this same power within you. Think for a moment about your own lives. How many times have you imagined negative scenarios, worrying about what could go wrong, visualizing failures and disappointments? And then, have you been surprised when these things materialized in your lives? But if imagination has the power to create our reality, wouldn't it be wiser to use it to imagine the outcomes we desire? I invite you to do an experiment. For the next 30 days, spend time each night before going to sleep vividly imagining the life you want. Don't just think about it abstractly. Really live that reality in your mind. Feel the emotions associated with having achieved your goals. See the details, hear the sounds, feel the textures. Make it as real as possible. And during the day, when you find yourself worried or fearful, stop. Take a moment to reorient your imagination towards what you want, not what you fear. Remember, your mind doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. Every thought, every mental image, is sowing the seeds of your future. Now, it's important to understand that this isn't magic. We're not talking about sitting and waiting for things to happen by magic. Imagination is powerful, but it must be accompanied by inspired action. When you vividly imagine what you want, you're energetically aligning yourself with that reality. This naturally leads you to take actions that bring you closer to your goals. Think of it as programming your mind's GPS. When you have a clear destination in mind, your internal GPS naturally guides you towards that destination. It shows you the way, helps you recognize opportunities you might otherwise have overlooked, gives you the confidence to make bold decisions when necessary. But here's the crucial part, you must believe. Faith is the bridge between your imagination and your reality. Without faith, your mental images are just passing fantasies. With faith, they become blueprints for building your future. And when I say faith, I don't mean blind or irrational belief. I mean a deep conviction based on understanding universal laws. The law that says thoughts become things, that the inner creates the outer, that the mind is the architect of our destiny. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If it were that simple, why isn't everyone doing it? The answer is simple, because not everyone knows it, and of those who know it, not everyone is willing to do the necessary inner work. You see, changing our habitual thought patterns isn't easy. It requires awareness, discipline, and persistence. It requires us to be willing to challenge our limiting beliefs, to question our assumptions about what's possible. It requires us to dare to dream big and believe in those dreams even when the outer world doesn't yet reflect that reality. But I promise you the effort is worth it. Because when you master the art of conscious imagination, you become the conscious creators of your lives. You're no longer victims of circumstances, but the architects of your destiny. So I ask you, what are you imagining for your lives? What seeds are you planting in the garden of your minds? Are you nurturing visions of success, love, abundance, and fulfillment? Or are you allowing worries, fears, and doubts to dominate your mental landscape? Remember, the future isn't something that simply happens to you. It's something you create, moment by moment, thought by thought, mental image by mental image. You have the power to shape that future through conscious imagination. So I invite you, starting today, to become the conscious creators of your own lives. Not in the sense of predicting an inevitable future, but in the sense of consciously creating the future you desire. Imagine vividly. Believe deeply. Act inspiredly. And always remember, there is no form in nature that is not produced and sustained by some imaginative activity. you are the creators of your reality. Every thought, every feeling, every mental image you hold is a seed planted in the garden of your life. Nurture it, nourish it, and you will see how it blossoms into the reality you desire. The power is in you. It's always been there. It's time to reclaim it, to use it consciously, to become the active co-creators of your lives and our world. Thank you for being here today. May your imaginations be fertile, may your visions be bold, and may your realities reflect the greatness of your highest dreams. Until our next meeting, keep imagining, keep believing, keep creating. The universe is waiting to manifest your most beautiful visions. Until next time. To further enhance our understanding and application of the power of imagination, let's explore 2 additional subtopics that are closely related to the core message. The role of emotional intensity in imagination. While we've discussed the importance of vivid visualization, it's crucial to delve deeper into the role of emotional intensity in the imaginative process. The strength and depth of the emotions you associate with your imagined scenarios can significantly impact the speed and effectiveness of your manifestation. When you engage in imaginative exercises, it's not enough to simply create mental pictures. You need to feel the emotions associated with your desired reality as if it were already true. The more intense and real the emotion, the more powerful the impact on your subconscious mind and, consequently, on your reality. To increase emotional intensity in your imaginative practice. 1. Use all your senses in your visualizations. Don't just see your desire, hear, smell, taste, and touch it in your mind. 2. Practice emotional memory. Recall a time when you felt extremely happy, confident, or successful, and channel that feeling into your imagined scenarios. 3. Use physical gestures or movements that align with your desired state to enhance the emotional experience. 4. Create a vision board or use other visual aids that evoke strong positive emotions related to your desire. Remember, the goal is to make your imagined scenarios so vivid and emotionally charged that your body begins to believe it's already experiencing your desire. This alignment of thought, emotion, and physical sensation creates a powerful magnetic force that attracts your desires into your reality.